I moved into my dream house, only to find someone already living there. So I recently bought my first house. It's a big deal for me. Like I've been saving for this for years. So when I finally found the place, a charming old Victorian-style house tucked away at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, I thought I hit the jackpot. It had everything I ever wanted. Wraparound porch, big bay windows, even a secret little garden out back. But as it turns out, the dream didn't last long. I moved in about 2 months ago. For the first few weeks, it was bliss. I'd wake up to the smell of coffee and fresh air, take long walks around the neighborhood, and spend evenings curled up in front of the fireplace. Everything was going perfectly, until it wasn't. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps upstairs. Now, I live alone, and this house only has 2 floors. There shouldn't have been anyone walking around, but I figured it was just the old wood creaking or something. You know, old houses and their quirks. I tried to shake it off and go back to sleep, but then I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and unmistakably coming from above me. At this point, I'm fully awake, and I'm starting to freak out. I grabbed my phone, but I didn't dial 911 just yet. Instead, I grabbed a flashlight and decided to go upstairs and check it out. Dumb move, I know, but in my head, I'm still convincing myself it's nothing. So I make my way up the stairs, trying to be as quiet as possible. When I reach the top, everything looks normal. There are 2 bedrooms up there, one I use as my bedroom, and the other as a guest room. The doors to both are closed, just as I left them. But the sound, it's still there. A soft creak, like someone shifting their weight. I open the door to the guest room. It's empty. Nothing out of place. Relief washes over me, and I'm about to head back downstairs when I notice something. The window in the guest room, which I know I had locked, is slightly ajar. A cold breeze blows in, making the curtains sway. All right, now I'm really freaked out. I rush over to close the window, and as I do, I catch something out of the corner of my eye. Across the street, in the shadows of the neighboring house, there's a figure standing there, just standing, staring. I freeze. They don't move. I'm about to grab my phone and call the cops when the figure turns and walks away, disappearing into the darkness. I wait a few minutes, listening for any more sounds, but it's dead quiet. Eventually, I convince myself that it's nothing, close the window, and head back to bed. For the next few days, everything seems fine. I chalk up the incident to nerves and try to move on. But then weird things start happening. Little things at first. I'd leave a room and come back to find a door open that I'd swear I closed. Or a light turned on when I knew I turned it off. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Then one night, things escalated. I was in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard the footsteps again. This time, they weren't just upstairs. They were coming from inside my room. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and that's when I saw him. A man, standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. He was wearing old, tattered clothes, and his skin looked pale, almost translucent. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just sat there, frozen, as he stared back at me, and then he spoke. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a hoarse whisper. "This is my house." My brain was scrambling to make sense of it. Was this some kind of intruder? A squatter? How had he been living here without me knowing? "I bought this house," I stammered. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step closer, and that's when I noticed something strange. His feet weren't touching the ground. He was floating. My heart dropped, and every horror movie I'd ever seen flashed through my mind. Ghost. He had to be a ghost. Before I could react, he disappeared. Just vanished into thin air. I didn't sleep at all that night. As soon as the sun came up, I called a paranormal investigator. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but after what I saw, I wasn't taking any chances. The investigator came by the next day with all his fancy gadgets and tools. He set up cameras, EMF meters, the whole shebang. For hours, nothing happened. I was starting to feel like an idiot for even calling him. But then, just as we were about to wrap up, the temperature in the room dropped. The lights flickered. And there, in the corner of the room, the figure appeared again. The investigator looked at me, wide-eyed. "You're not crazy," he said, barely able to hide his shock. "There's definitely something here." He did some research on the house, and what he found sent chills down my spine. Apparently, the previous owner, a man named James, had lived here for over 30 years. He was a bit of a recluse, and no one in the neighborhood really knew much about him. One day, he just disappeared. No one ever found his body, and the house was eventually sold to cover his debts. According to the investigator, it's possible that James never really left. He died here, and now his spirit is trapped, still thinking it's his house. And I'm the intruder. Here's the kicker, though. The investigator went back to review the footage, and in every single shot where the figure appeared, he wasn't just floating, he was standing behind me, staring at me the whole time. I didn't last another week in that house. I packed up, found a cheap apartment across town, and put the place on the market. It's still listed if anyone's interested. TLDR, I bought my dream house, but it turns out the previous owner never left, and he really doesn't like company.